Welcome back to the Real Estate 100 show. Today is a very special day. I have been following this guest, this gentleman, for quite a long time, actually pretty much since the beginning of the pandemic, because he was doing things with respect to YouTube in Canada before he even got here that I truly admire and still admire. And he is now a fully licensed mortgage broker and helping hundreds and hundreds of Canadians every year get mortgages. This is Nav Bindra from Grow with Nav. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Nolan. Thank you for inviting me.
This is amazing. This is the first time we've actually had the opportunity to be face-to-face. We've interacted over socials and whatnot a few times. You gave probably one of the single best applications to join our company that we have ever received. Unfortunately, we weren't licensed as a brokerage in Ontario at the time. We still aren't. I'm licensed personally there, but somebody that in a heartbeat we would have hired, and it's been really cool over the last year or two to see you do what you've done in the mortgage industry and build the team that you've built. And I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you about that experience, about your journey here, your journey as an entrepreneur, your journey as a mortgage broker, and then talking a little bit about tips and tricks for people who are new to Canada and going through that process of buying their first home. So, again, thanks for coming on. Tell me a little bit about your story, the backstory that we were talking about before we came on here with respect to your journey to Canada and your timing and everything else. It sounds like it's interesting.
Absolutely. And Nolan, thank you so much. I've been following you. We were talking, off screen that I've been following you for a long time, and your videos have really inspired me to research more for my clients and for the channel. So yeah, kudos to you for creating such good content, on your channel as well. About me, I joined the industry, like the research industry. So I'm a researcher, by training and by profession. So I joined the industry back in 2009. I work for PepsiCo. So I have been a researcher for different companies, and I joined the largest market research company. So, when I joined the industry at 22, when I started working at 22 in a mainstream, profession, I was always taught how to research. Because I was working for the largest market research company. I was working with the big brands like PepsiCo, British American Tobacco, Walmart, all those. So that's something that just came naturally to me. Storytelling just came naturally to me. And that's where, I did that for about 8-9 years, before I decided, and I actually did that across 18 countries. So I was traveling a lot, I was leading a team of 40 people. So I had traits of research and leadership, by training and by experience for the first 8-9 years, and presentation and storytelling. But then I thought I could do more, right? So that's where, we started our first business back in 2017, which failed miserably. We were in Hong Kong. It failed miserably. We lost 6 figures in that business. We came to India, lived with my parents for 1 year because, we didn't have a lot of money then. Started a couple of things there. Then is when we planned our journey to Canada. We were like, we need a fresh start. And that's where we thought, okay, let's just, Canada PR is easy. We know that, right? So it was much easier earlier. And we were like, okay, let's just apply for Canadian PR. And my brother was here and he was like, yeah, why not? And that's where we came in 2020. I started the YouTube channel in 2019, but we came in 2020, just one day before the pandemic. So 11th of March is when we landed, and we were still in the air when WHO announced that it's a pandemic. So we just landed and people were like talking about it, and we were like, what happened, right? So, and then, things, yeah, we'll talk about that later, but yeah, that's how we came to Canada and that's how we landed. And then it was almost like a 7-month struggle to find our feet in Canada.
I can't even imagine, because you would have basically landed and had maybe 5 to 7 days before the country was on lockdown, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a job when I came. So I had a job when I came, in the sense that, I was going back to my previous, company that I worked with, across 18 countries that I was talking about, the market research company. But that went away. So, 12th of March is when it was our first day, and 16th of March is when, the lockdowns happened. And 15th of March is when I got a call from Nielsen, which was a company that I was going to start with. And they said that you don't have a job anymore, right? So we are putting a hiring freeze. We are not doing any hiring. We are not calling anyone that we hired because we don't know how to do it, because offices are closed. And that's when and my wife, she also lost 3 interviews. She's an app developer. So yeah, everything went south. We actually got a house close to the office. And then even that went away because they were like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. And we were in Airbnb 7 days. We booked for just 7 days because we kind of figured out, how we are going to, proceed in the next 7 days. And it just went south, right? Everything. And then we booked. Yeah, it was just, we just had to, we were just taking one day at a time at that time.
No kidding. Well, I mean, that is where true entrepreneurs really excel, is when they get put into those moments of absolute terror and struggle, and they come out on the other end even more successful than they went into it. That's amazing. I have 2 questions that came up as you were speaking there. First and foremost is what was the business in Hong Kong that failed? And then 2, you've got like this perfect mix for YouTube, which is research, which most people don't realize how much of YouTube is research. And then storytelling, which is the other big piece. It was like you were born to do this, right?
I didn't know that until I started it, right? So, but the more I did it, I realized that, yeah, this is it, right? So now if someone asks me what I want to do all my life, the answer is not mortgages. The answer is teaching, right? I want to teach all my life, and I want to teach, about business. I want to teach about real estate. I want to teach about investing. And, that's a lot of you also do on your channel, right? So I think that's my, you would say, like my North Star, that I just want to teach till I die, right? So, and storytelling and research just comes in really handy when you're doing that. But I realized it really late, and I was just fortunate that I still realized it, right? People just don't, sometimes don't get that, right? Sorry, what was the first question, Nolan?
The first question was, you mentioned you had a business that failed in Hong Kong to the tune of $100,000, which is wild.
So we were doing something related to research where we thought that, it would be cool to click a photograph of a receipt, like any receipt that you get, and then harvest data off that. And we were rewarding people to give us receipts, right? So this is a very common business in the US. There are a couple of companies who are doing that. At that time, it was, the thing, but, we were in Hong Kong. The biggest reason why the business did not do well is because of the language barrier that we had in Hong Kong. And we were 2 entrepreneurs, me and my wife. She's an app developer. I was the marketeer and the researcher. We figured out how to do it. We launched the app as well, but we could not figure out the culture and the language. And that's where we invested a lot of money, and we were not getting enough. And we thought we were doing well. We were actually one of the finalists, for Techstars. We were part of Techstars, which is the largest, one of the largest, like incubators and, accelerator programs. We were doing, like POCs and, for MTR, which is the largest, transport network in Hong Kong, and we were doing it for their malls. So it was on paper looking really good if someone looked at us, from the outside, but inside we knew that we were bleeding money. And that was purely because of the lack of knowledge, from a cultural point of view.
Interesting. Now, is this when you started the potato business? Because we got to talk about the potato business.
Yes. So no, it was actually after. So we did this for about 2 years, like roughly about 2 years, yeah. And then we came to India, and this business, we actually got to India, and we had some success when we, went with the same model in India. But it was, like it died down in 1 year, and then we started to come here. So I'll not talk about that. But potato was very interesting. So when we came to India, before that, we were watching Shark Tank because we were entrepreneurs and we wanted to understand what people are doing and, how. So there was a company called Potato Parcel in the US. They still operate, and Kevin O'Leary actually invested in them. So, and they actually do gag gifts, which is like a potato, like an actual potato that you can eat and cook and eat. And they used to draw things on that and used to write messages on that and send that to friends, family, people, just to make them laugh, right? It's a gag gift, right? So it could be anonymous as well. So, so we created these boxes, which we if a potato is for 50 cents, we were selling the box for $4. Our overall cost was like 15%, some crazy, including shipping, right? 15-20% of the entire thing. And that went viral because we sent it to influencers, and there's an important lesson there, right? So this is all funny, but there's an important lesson. So we sent it to influencers, and there were a couple of influencers who posted that on their Instagram, and that's where we went viral, and we actually sold 3,000 potatoes in like 7 months, and those boxes at 80% margin. And we were like, shit. There were 2 lessons there. One, it's not that hard to make money, and 2, social media is so powerful. Because we were sending it to influencers. That was our number one strategy. We send it to influencers. They open the box on their channel because it's funny. And that's how we sell more. And I was like, I want to now be on the other side, right? I want to be the influencer who does it for myself and if required for other brands, right? So that was the beginning. This was 2019. And that's where in November of 2019, we started the YouTube channel.
Yeah. So I find this interesting because we have so many people right now who are concerned about their extra $300,000, $500,000 a month on their payments, which, by the way, they qualified for because they qualified at a qualifying rate that was way higher than the mortgage that they got. And you're telling me that you sold potatoes in a box for basically $4 in cost, and it went viral, and you made how? Like you were telling me before that you were able to purchase what for your father and yourself?
Yeah, it was a car that I purchased, and I actually paid off the entire car with that money. So, and yeah, my dad is still driving it. So
Unreal. So I mean, if you put your mind to it, you can do pretty much anything, right?
100%. It's just about understanding your strength. It's just about understanding the market more than the strength. And I told you, right, I was a researcher. So my number one job for 9 years was to understand the customer. And that I think I do really well. And that's where I understood that people like to laugh. So there are two ways to go viral, right? One is you make people, you entertain people, or you educate them on something that they can, actually get tangible. It's not about just mindset. It's about, how do we make money for them, right? So, and I just identified that let's entertain them first. And yeah, it's, you talked about, $500, $300, and I understand that not all people can hustle for 20 hours a day. They have family and, kids and, responsibilities. But I still feel that, there are opportunities. If you put your mind to it and your strengths to it, you can make that additional money that's going towards your mortgage because of the high interest rates.
Yeah, absolutely. A weird question for you, but I'm going to throw it at you anyways. If you were in a position right now as a Canadian and you had the issues that a lot of people are facing with inflation and money, what would you do right now to start a business and to make that extra $1,000 a month?
So I would first sit back and look at my strengths. Let's say I'm an app developer, right? Let's say another one. Let's say I'm an accountant, right? App developers, it's just, easier because they can pick up another contract, right? Let's say I'm a developer, I'm an accountant right now, and I'm good with, handling money. And I'm good with, doing it for someone else and making, $60,000, $70,000, a year. But I can do bookkeeping for a lot of business owners, like small-time business owners, because that's my strength. So you just sit back and then first understand. A lot of people actually make the mistake of trying to make $1 million in the first year of business. You don't have to do that. First, you just need to sit and then, look at your budget and then look at the shortfall. Let's say it's $500, and then find a way of making $500 using the existing strengths that you have. For example, mine is research. I would go on LinkedIn, search for like startup founders. There are so many articles. I actually did that when I came in the pandemic, right? So I searched for startup founders, and then I reached out to them and said that I would do the first project for free. Right, I would research the market for you. I would do secondary research. I would do competitive research. I would do, like cost analysis of, other companies versus you. I'll do it for free for the first time. And I made $5,000. I think there was a time I was making $4,000 to $5,000 a month during the pandemic just by doing that when I didn't have a job. Because I used my strengths, right? You just need to. We all have strengths. I can't believe if someone has worked for like 3-4 years in an industry, they don't have any strengths that they can utilize outside of their job.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. People just don't realize what they have and what they're sitting on with all of the experience that they have and everything that they've done, right? I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Now, my next question for you is, given your research background, how the heck did you end up in mortgages? Because people end up in real estate and mortgages because they didn't do enough research and they didn't realize how hard it is. People think that realtors get paid too much. They have no idea how hard it is to make a living as a realtor, especially when there's so many people in the industry and so few that do it really, really well. I mean, if you had the time and the skill set to do research, you should have never found yourself into the mortgage in the mortgage industry. You should have ran as far as you could, as fast as you could, the opposite direction. How'd you find yourself here? Like,
I mean, Nolan, it was more of a funnel for me, right? So when I came to Canada, my audience was immigrants, right? So I always talk about that, in any business, you need to build a funnel. So it's a massive funnel for me. So, my audience was immigrants. I had 200,000, like subscribers who were willing to come to Canada. The second problem, so one is coming to Canada. I made all the videos on that, how to, do your process on your own. So if you look at my channel in the beginning, it was all about the process, right? So I garnered a lot of audience. The second problem that they have and they face is how to get a job, right? That's where I made something called as the First Job Accelerator. It was a coaching program where I took 10 people, in a group over 2 days, and I used to teach them, how to get your first job in Canada. So it was called the First Job Accelerator. I didn't complicate it. It's your first job in Canada. It's First Job Accelerator, right? So I made, like I was making about $40,000 a year doing that for like 6 hours a week. Right. So, and that I was solving a problem. So that was the second, like the second part of the funnel. The third one was, what's the next problem? Okay, now you're making good money. Now you need a house. And that's where I thought, okay, and I'm using research. Research is a skill, right? You can use it for immigration. You can use it for job search. You can use it for real estate. You can use it for anything, right? And then I thought, okay, I bought a couple of houses at that time. And I was like, okay, what's the next problem? People lack education, especially first-time home buyers, on how to buy a house. Because when I bought a house, I wished I had a mortgage agent who would guide me through the entire process the way I do with my first-time home buyer clients now. So that's where I thought, okay, house. Then there were two options, right? Whether to be a realtor or a mortgage agent. Now, I love my travel freedom. I can't be a realtor sitting in, Florida, but I can be a mortgage agent sitting in Florida. I can at least, take calls and stuff like that, right? So I was like, no, I need mortgage free, I need freedom. Plus, I am I'm very passionate about finance. And I was like, this is kind of a good mix where I help people get their houses because that's part of my funnel. And I have the travel freedom and I still, have the love for numbers. And that's where I ended up in mortgages.
Amazing. And I mean, you've done a couple things that most mortgage brokers never do in their first year in their career. And I mean, the amount of people that you've helped, the amount of volume that you've done for somebody who's first, how long, when did you get licensed exactly? It was
November of 2021.
Yeah. So coming up on your second year, your results are incredible. And the only thing you can attribute that to is being very, very good at teaching people how to do what they want to do, which is purchase that property and get them from where they are now to that goal of home ownership. So I have to commend you on that because it just doesn't happen in this industry very often. Yeah, there's lots of guys who spend 3 to 5 years and build really big businesses, but the amount of people that you've helped in such a short time is absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Now, let's talk a little bit about that, because I'm assuming, is it a fair assumption that most of your clients are new to Canada in some way, shape, or form?
Oh,
so they're buying their
90%,
first house.
90% of the house. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple interesting things right now that are happening in Canada. One, which I didn't plan on getting into, but I think it's worth touching on, which is how politically charged immigration is right now, and how ridiculous the conversation is around that being politically charged. There's a episode on this channel where I talked about the fact that, immigration hasn't really increased that much. What's happened is it's finally ticked over a nominal figure that is big, which is 1 million. But the actual growth in immigration isn't significant compared to what it was 10 years ago. And I think it's really becoming an interesting conversation, an interesting topic around the fact that there's so many people who are blaming the housing issue on immigration when the actual housing issue is politics. It's municipal politics, not in my backyard, not allowing building, not allowing more density. It's provincial politics in a lot of the provinces not supporting their cities in the infrastructure that they need to build what they need to build. I mean, this is a homegrown problem, not a foreign grown problem. And I'm curious from your standpoint, being, a recent immigrant in the last 3 years, and dealing with many people who are in the same situation. What's it like on that side of the conversation for you guys right now?
But so if I look at immigration, and I made a video on this, 2 years ago, and, a lot of that is happening right now. Canada cannot really survive without immigration, right? So because we need people, it's an aging population, you need taxpayers, and you need to pay for the OAS and, all that, right? So, it's just, yeah, there's no debate there that, immigration is required. But my view is that the kind of immigration that's happening is not probably, up to mark. Like, they are getting more, people who have really high scores, really good, but not enough skilled trades, right? And then there's a problem of, that can they handle more skilled trades because they are very unionized, right? So I was just talking to a union rep here, and he was like, it's very difficult to get welders. And it's not just difficult to get welders as, like a supply problem, as in, more workers, but it's also difficult to train them, right? Because we don't have enough people and resources to do that, right? So I think it's about the kind of immigration that's happening that worries me more than, immigration itself. And you're right, it's 1 million number, but the bigger problem is supply. And there's so much, politics and red tape, and, I'm pretty sure, you know it better than me, but it's so much politics and red tape that leads to not enough supply. And that, I don't know, what's going to happen in 5 years. I don't think really that the next generation will be able to buy houses. I think multi-generational homes will come back. All of that will happen not just because of immigration, but also because of the supply issues that we have.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's important that people start to realize that this is a Canada problem. It's not an external problem. I mean, you look at immigration, you look at foreign buyers, especially in Vancouver, and whether people want to believe it or not, they're hot topics, but they're significant in the fact that people are talking about them, but they're pretty much rounding errors in the grand scheme of how much they're actually affecting the market. So we're picking out these things like immigration, foreign buyers. We're trying to have these political conversations to affect things and fix things. And of course, then you see the government go and change the rules on foreign buyers, zero effect. Well, if they change the rules on immigration, I actually fear that it is an even worse issue, because what people don't realize is that countries that have solid immigration tend to be countries that increase productivity, and countries that don't have solid immigration tend to be countries that start to collapse. And I'll go out on a limb here and say right now that the biggest risk to the United States in being the primary world currency is their lack of immigration and their thought process with respect to turning people away as opposed to bringing them in, which, by the way, is what the United States was founded on, was bringing people into the country. It is a country of immigrants, and their biggest risk isn't, currency devaluation or anything else like that. It is them turning people away and China taking advantage of that, and BRIC nations taking advantage of that, and becoming the world currency, the reserve currency, because of the fact that those other countries are focused on growth, where the U.S. is focused on making things smaller and really kind of imploding. So, I certainly hope that is something that goes away. With respect to new people who are new to Canada right now, what are they facing with respect to mortgages and buying a home? And then what is the process that you guide them through from the minute they land? Or maybe even go back a step, because I know that a lot of your viewers are outside of Canada and are looking at immigrating to Canada. What's your process that you take them through from the point of when they start thinking about moving here all the way through to when they actually get the keys to that house and get to start to be a homeowner in Canada?
Absolutely. And Nolan, we can talk all about, down payments. We can talk about, policies. We can talk about, all that, but it's always boils down to an income problem. Right. And that I understand, whether you talk about, any country, right, whether it's buying a house, whether it's, sustaining a lifestyle, whether it's supporting your family, whether it's, supporting your retirement, it all boils down to an income problem. Because if you have good income and then you have some discipline, you can actually work through things and you can retire well, you can do well by your family. So my number one guidance is around income. So I may be a mortgage agent, but I put all my energy on my channel into helping people make more income. That's why I launched First Job Accelerator, because it was not just about you getting a first job, which is $50,000. If you are, if you are like masters, back home and you have some experience, you need to get a multiple six-figure job, because $100,000 is not as fancy as it sounds right now, right? So my whole intent is to make more money, and then a lot of the problems which are very basic go away, and then you can plan for the house. And for new immigrants who are here planning to buy a house 6 months into Canada, I actually don't ask them to rush into their purchase decisions, because the worst that would happen to them is that, let's say they save, and most people who are my clients, they are making $150,000, $200,000, which is really good if you are renting, but not as good at as of today if you are buying. If they're renting and saving, like say $5,000-$6,000, I ask them to save for emergency fund over and above whatever they are saving for the house. And only if they do that is when they should buy a house, because God forbid if they lose their job, they don't want to default on their mortgage, because you and I both know that that's not good. And that, leads to, bad things, and it can ruin you for, few years, right? So I think that's where, my education is based on just working on income. And then when they get into a call with me, I strategize based on their income on what the next steps are, and how much do you need to save for the down payment, and how much do you need to save for emergencies. And then I put you in touch with the realtors, and we all, get you your first house. I think that's the right way of doing it.
It's amazing, because you pointed out that there's two things in your process that most Canadians don't do. And the first is save an emergency fund. And then the second is start this process early, before you've saved the down payment. I mean, those two things alone, I can't convince Canadians to do them. The fact that you've got people who are brand new to the country, and that's the process they're on. I mean, you're actually putting them a step ahead than the people who are born and raised here, just because they're following your process and because they've engaged you. I mean, that's absolutely amazing.
Thank you. And it's a cultural thing as well, Nolan. I would have to say that, right? Because most of my clients are Indians, they're South Asians, and culturally, we are not willing to put things on credit. We don't take a lot of debt, right? So that's why you see, and you would observe that with your client pool as well, that if you have a South Asian client, you would see that they don't have a lot of credit card debt. They would probably not buy the car, before they buy a house, right? Because just, the way, India is set up, and, a lot of these countries are set up, things don't work on credit, they work on cash. So just culturally, the way we are brought up, it's about not going into debt too much. So yeah, I would not say that, it's just my education, but it's also the way people are brought up, in South Asian cultures.
Amazing. When you look at how long it's taking for somebody once they've landed to actually buying a home, what are you seeing right now as the average amount of time that it takes for somebody to actually get to that finish line?
I mean, I've had clients who have bought homes within 6 months, like 6 months with a less than 20% down. If they're doing a 10% down, they can actually, I have had clients which have done as soon as 6 months. And then there are clients who can't buy for years, right? So, but on average, I'm seeing around 1 year, 1.5 years is kind of the average mark of the clients that I've served when they are buying a house. It all, again, boils down on how stable their jobs are. That's the other thing, right? Right now, when a person comes to me, they are 3 months into the job, the wife just started. Let's say the guy, is 3 months into the job, the wife just started. I'm like, even if you have the money, don't buy a house right now, because you don't know what's going to happen to your job. You're still on probation. You just wait for 3-4 months. What if you don't like Ontario? What if you want to move, right? What if you lose a job and get a job in BC, in Calgary, right? So I think that's the other thing. But I think, 1.5 years is a good time, an average time for a new immigrant to buy a house.
And then I'm going to throw you a little bit of a lob ball. What's required for a new immigrant to buy a house at 6 months to a year and a half? What do they need document-wise?
Look, so document wise, you just need, it's just, about income. So you need your pay stub, you need your, employment letter. You should ideally not be on probation, but sometimes, even if you are on probation, some lenders, out there, would waive that in certain conditions. You need to build your credit. So that's the other question that I have especially, if there's a couple who is, come to Canada. Most of the times what happens is because culturally, again, you are not used to credit, the husband gets a credit card and they get a secondary credit card for the wife, but the wife does not start her credit. Now, there are programs like New to Canada program where you can actually get, the secondary applicant has 0 credit score. You can still get, a house, but that's not good practice, right? So I always, I tell people that you should build, at least 3 to 6 months of credit before you even think of buying a house. It's not about the credit score, but it's just about the history. And then if you're buying in 6 months, then you need 10% down payment at least. You can't just do a minimum 5% that is, glorified a lot. You need 10% down payment because you don't have enough credit and they can't use your Equifax credit because there's no Equifax in India. So you need to show enough history of credit to be able to do less than, 10% down payment. And that's 12 months usually. And then you have the usual down payment. Another misconception that I always hear from, my client says, oh, I need funds in Canada for 90 days. That's actually not true. We can actually use 90 days of history in India. India counts as well. So those are all, the things that you need. Just down payment, credit, income, obviously the home that you're buying. And yeah.
What about status-wise? PR?
No, of course, so on work permit, if you're in Calgary, then you can, of course, buy if you have 6 months validity on your work permit. So you can buy with a less than 20%, 10% down, whatever it is. But rest of the places, the more popular, locations, Ontario, BC, you need, permanent residency. Now, you can technically buy as a work permit, but then you have foreign buyer tax, the non-resident, speculation tax, which is 25% in Ontario and 20%. And some places it's a little bit higher in BC. So those are all the rules and regulations that you need to know, when you're buying a house. But yeah, permanent residency would be the most ideal way to buy.
I love that. Do you have any interesting conversations around the fact that you're telling them they need to build credit, you have to go and get a credit card, yet they've been raised to avoid those credit cards at all costs and not borrow money? Is that any interesting conversations ever around that?
No, honestly, Nolan, not really. They like to keep away from credit, but they also understand that credit is required, to buy things like houses, right? So I've never had, like someone pushing me back on, I don't want a credit card. If I, tell them and give good logic and educate them, they always say, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And is there any place that you send them specifically when you send them to get a credit card, or do you just let them go get it themselves, or?
Yeah, it doesn't matter, top 4 or 5 banks. My experience with Scotia was good when I was new to Canada. They give good credit, like limits. So the problem is that when you are new to Canada, you only get $500 or $1,000 of credit limit on the credit card, right? And that's sometimes not enough from a utilization point of view, right? You can make multiple payments, but it's not just enough, right? So Scotiabank, probably is one of the banks that gives a little bit bigger credit limit, and that's the bank that I banked with. I also worked with when I came in. So that's, I just tell them that, Scotiabank might give you a better credit limit, and that's where, you should go. But otherwise, I don't think there's any difference. Everyone has the same programs.
Yeah, no kidding. On that 90 days bank statements thing, I think you're right. And to clarify that, most of the time the rules is more around the money clearing the Canadian bank system, which is usually a 30-day hold or at least a 30-day monitoring period, as the banks have a requirement under, what is it called? It's not OSFI. It is, what's the fraud organization?
AML?
What's that?
AML, the anti-money laundering.
Anti-money laundering, yeah, and there's an organization for it. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, basically those banks have a requirement to hold it for 30 days, and but as long as you can show the source of funds from where it came from, I mean, yeah, that's one of the big misconceptions for sure, is that you need to have it here for 90 days, but 30 is typically, we try to get our clients to get it at 35 to 40 days prior to closing to make sure that there isn't any holds on it or anything like that. Yeah. What other advice do you give to new Canadians on their mortgages and their real estate purchases? Like, what about buying a house? Is there a type of house that you would encourage them to look at versus not look at, or?
I mean, Nolan, it's again boils down to your affordability, right? So I don't recommend at least first-time home buyers to buy a massive house, to start with. I think a starter home, and I do a lot of my mortgages in Ontario, right? So Ontario, a starter home, even in a place like Kitchener where I am, you would, if you are looking for freehold, it'll be $750,000, and for that, right now, you need income close to 180. Assuming you don't have any big debts, right? So it's all about getting into the starter homes right now and building yourself up. Your first home will never be your your forever home, and that's true for everyone. I'm pretty sure you would be saying that to your clients as well. It's okay to start with a condo as long as it's in a very good location. For instance, here, if you look at it, downtown Kitchener, I have a condo there. That was my first home that I bought, and it's really doing well, both in terms of rentals and in terms of the appreciation that I got from it. Same way, if you are Calgary is very different. I'll not talk about that. I don't really like the condo market in Calgary, so to say. But again, if you're buying in good business districts, even if you are starting with a condo, and if that's what you can afford, then why not? It's just a starter home.
Totally. And I think that's important. And that's the thing that I think Canadians have lost sight of as well, is that there should be some expectations around what your first home is going to be. And it's not an average home, right? And that's the biggest mistake we've seen people make over the last 5 to 10 years, is they expect to get into the small McMansion as their first place, when, ever since the beginning of time, you've had to buy a small property and work up to the next one and the next one and the next one.
Mm.
But the expectations have really, really changed around that. What I love about what I've found, and it doesn't matter what country they immigrate from, new immigrants as mortgage clients are typically the best ones you can get, because they have a direct interest in getting to the finish line, and they're willing to take advice and just say, hey, what do you want me to do? And then they go and do that. And that
Yes.
credit question I asked you, after I asked it, I realized that that's exactly the case. They're just like, here's where we're trying to get to. And because of their experience and because of what it takes to make that decision to leave a country and come here, they're also willing to make that decision to move forward, to do what they need to do to build out a home and some wealth. And on the note of wealth, you've purchased more than just the one property. You own a rental property in Calgary, do you not?
Yes, I do.
You own others as well?
I have a rental property in Kitchener downtown, which was my first house. Then I turned it into a rental. I own this house, which I bought as a pre-construction in 2020. Now I got it this year. I have a rental property duplex in Seaton in Calgary, and then I just purchased a 8-plex in Ohio, US. I'm all over the place.
8-plex in Ohio.
Yeah, I'm all over the place, but yeah, I just go where the value is, right? So.
Okay, so this is going a direction I did not expect it to go. Tell me about the 8-plex in Ohio. There's got to be a lot to buying, first of all, in the U.S. I wouldn't even think of doing that until you suggested it right now. And then buying and managing and everything else in another country, another state, another city. Tell me about that. What's that like?
I mean, so I always... I do think that, and that's controversial, but I do think that there are very few areas where you can get cash flow in Canada, right now. So, Calgary was one place where I thought, and I'm not looking at appreciation, right? I know that, it's cyclical. I know that, oil dependency is there. And I was like, I'm willing to hold it for 20 years. And I had an insight about Seaton that no one else, a lot of people didn't have in 2021. June. So Seaton, so I was just researching, and I'm the kind of person, I'm not a good researcher. I just out-research people, right? So I went to like 15th, 16th page of Google at that time when I was researching about Calgary. And then I found on the Ministry of Transportation's website, like a map of the sea train, which was going to Seaton. And at that time, I was not getting any news articles about it. But that was like a legit website, which had a map of the Seaton extension. And I know that locals would probably know that, but, out of state people would not, right? So I was like, that's interesting. Why don't I, delve deeper into that area, which is Seaton. And that's what I did. And then I told my realtor there that, I want a house, like a duplex, within 2 kilometers of the hospital. which is one of the biggest hospitals in Seaton, right? So in Calgary, right? So I want, because I knew that there was no plan for where the stations will be, but I knew that there will be, a station around the hospital, right? So I was like, I want within 2 kilometers. So I got something within like 1.5, 1.6 kilometers. And I was like, now we'll see, right? So it's a good property. It will cash flow. I bought it for $500,000 and less than that. In fact, less than $500,000. It's a duplex. It's like renting for like $4,000. I'm making $500 cash flow every month, despite it being at 6% interest rate. So I was like, it makes sense. I bought in a partner. I didn't have the money, right? So I got in a partner. I was like, do you want to go 50-50 on that? And we just did that. And that insight actually panned out really well, because when things were getting crazy, then the news article came in that, C-Train will be extended. I don't know if it will be, but, the news said that, it will be. And then everyone, started thinking about Seaton, and then the prices went up, and still it's a pretty good area to invest in right now, So that was the insight that, my research has got me. And same way for US, I was like, I'm not liking the fact that I'm not getting cash flow, because then I really believe that if you're not investing for cash flow and only for appreciation, then the asset is not working for you. You are working for the asset. So with that, mindset, I thought that, okay, what else can I do? And then I thought US, okay, interesting. I attended a workshop, by Alfonso Codra. He was the first, guest on this channel as well. So, like my channel as well. So he's a multifamily investor based out of Canada, and he was also investing in the US. And I saw his videos, and I was like, yeah, he's a Canadian investing in the US. How can I do that?
Sorry, what was his name?
Alfonso Codra.
Okay, Alfonso Codra. Okay, go on. And then you thought?
And then I thought that, so this guy is a Canadian investing in the US. I can do that as well, right? So I'm, like inherently very curious, right? So I was like, okay. Then I saw that he has a program, like a mastermind program. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. What does it cost? So I got into a call with them, and it cost like, I don't know, $15,000 or something. At that time, I was making good money with mortgages. So this was last year. And I was like, it's a small price to pay for at least knowing whether I want to do this or not. At least I'll not have the regret that I didn't even know, right? So I joined that. My coach, on US real estate investing has done a lot of, and he was also Canadian, but now he's lives in the US. And he taught me, how to do US investing. So I invested in the first property in Ohio. I was surprised to know that PRs can actually, buy properties, not just, it's just that you can't do it with the banks. You can only go private there. But even on 9-10% interest, my 8plex on day one is giving me $900 US dollars of cash flow after my property and everything. And after we renovate the units, we are almost halfway through the renovations. So 4 units out of 8 have been renovated, and we have renovated the common area to, there were stores in the common area. I'll get into that. I don't have to get into that, but that will increase my cash flow to $2,500 if I don't refinance, by end of this year.
What was the purchase price on the place?
It was $449,000 for an 8plex. It was an off market. The guy was retiring, 74 years old. And those are the connections that I got through the mastermind, right? So you have to have the right connections, I think, if you're going into the US. And once you have that, and the process is the same, you just need to protect yourself from, people get sued all the time in the US because, it's just the rules are very different. So you need to just, do asset protection very well. And you need to make sure that you're structured very well in the US to avoid double taxation. And once you have that, it's easier to buy a house in US than in Canada.
This is incredible. I don't think, I just have to point this out because I don't think people will pick up on the significance of the cash flow you're getting off of what I'm going to assume is probably going to be all in after everything's renovated, probably about a $500,000 purchase. Your cash flow, forget like the fact that the mortgage is being paid down and the financing is being paid down by the tenants. Your cash flow itself would cover all of the interest, all of everything else. In fact, you could pretty much off of that cash flow go and purchase another identical property and have both of them paid off in probably 5 to 10 years, which means you'd have $1 million worth of assets inside, doing the math roughly in my head, 7 years.
Yeah. And that was the math that I did, right? So I was, in fact, with all the money that I earned through mortgages, I love cars, right? I like it, right? I wanted to buy a Tesla, right? So I booked a Tesla. This was December before Christmas, and Tesla came in, and I had the check in my hand, and I was like, I'm going to give this check to the Tesla guy, and I'm going to pick the Tesla. And then the Ohio investment came in, and I did the same math in my head, and I was getting the 1% rule, like more than 1% rule. And that was like, that's crazy. And what's stopping me from doing that? And I saw the check, and this was what was stopping me. So I didn't pick up the Tesla. I bought the 8plex instead. And I know that it'll pay for my Tesla many times over, right? So,
well, and I'm glad, because you can't say that you're a car guy and then say, and I was going to buy a Tesla. Because those two things don't go together.
Look, so I'm also very, I step very carefully. So, if I'm buying a car, I look at, now I have a Toyota, like a Highlander, right? So I go for the safe, I don't buy sports car and stuff like that. But yeah, I like to have a nice car. Let's put it like that.
Absolutely. I love it. Wow, that's incredible. Just the numbers on that Ohio property blow my mind, because, I mean, you're talking if on a rinse and repeat of that, not just minimizing your risk by reducing your debt obligations really, really fast, but you're talking over a course of 10 to 15 years, like tens of, if not close to hundreds of millions of dollars in net worth, if the numbers stayed the same for the next little while, like that, and off the interest rate that you're paying too. That's incredible. I think there's some really great lessons in here, and I think the big takeaway for me just in this conversation is what you said about income, where it all boils down to an income problem. And I think I'd add to that is it's not just an income problem, but a mindset problem. And what I'm clearly seeing and what I've seen from you is that you've got one thing that is your biggest strength, whether you realize it or not, and that is a mindset that has allowed you to push through a whole bunch of things that most people would never even get close to. Whether it's building a YouTube channel with a couple 100,000 subscribers, most people never make it to 1,000, let alone 10,000. You've done that, against all of your research, which probably should have told you that being a mortgage broker was one of the hardest jobs on the planet, especially for somebody who has had little experience with the Canadian finance system, and to do what you're doing and teaching people the way you're teaching people now. Just absolutely incredible. And what I really love is that your passion is teaching that mindset to more people. And my hope and my encouragement would be that you just don't settle on teaching that to new Canadians, but really start pushing towards teaching that to people who have been here their entire lives. Because I can tell you right now, you would look at the mindset in the news, you look at the mindset in the media, you look at the mindset in the comment section of YouTube, which is disgusting right now. And a lot of people could use the message that you're sharing and that you're spreading. So I got to thank you for that. And I got to thank you for coming on this show. And I'm going to tell you right now, this isn't going to be the last time that we do this, my friend.
Thank you so much, Nolan. I really appreciate you inviting me. I love the conversation. I can't believe it's an hour. So yeah, thank you so much for, inviting me. And, I love your content, and just keep doing, irrespective of what people say in the comment section. You and I both know that, it's the right thing to do, just educating people, right? So yeah, I love your content, and yeah, I'll take your advice.
I think we share the same passions, and it's that right there, which is to inspire people to thrive clearly, and then to also do as much giving back as possible. And great minds think alike and find each other. And I'm sure glad I found you, because this has been probably one of the best conversations I've had in quite a while, not just on YouTube or about YouTube or on a podcast, but just in general. You are an inspiration, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nolan.